everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm part of a company called Flybits based in Toronto, Canada, focusing on this notion of contextual computing. Like, how do we make information relevant for people, not just based on location, but based on a number of situational data that is surrounding a user. We started Flybits in a research lab about 5 years ago, and the motivation we had was that we could find a lot of location-based services, but finding a platform that allowed enterprises to create these contextual experiences for their audience was very difficult to find. So we identified that there's still a big gap between the physical world and the digital world. This is an example. As a growing startup, we are looking for offices, and this is a picture I took about 3 weeks ago in San Francisco, looking for an office space. And I realized that there are probably two ways that I can interact with this location. Either I can call someone to know more, or there is this data structure called URL, or a web page, that I can connect to, go through a bunch of data, and then figure out whether this space is relevant for our startup or not. So there is something missing here. What if we could have an icon there that I could connect to it, and the first information that I would receive will say, this space is too expensive for a Canadian startup moving to Silicon Valley. So I quickly move on. There are other examples out there. If you go to a shopping mall, you're going to see stores full of these icons. Twitter feed, Facebook, Pinterest. I haven't seen one person who just stops by a store and say, oh, wow, this store has a Twitter feed. Let me check it out. It's passive data. What if we could have an icon there that you could connect to it and say, this thing that you were looking for is on sale in this store? So everybody is thinking and talking about the evolution of connectivity. We started with at least from what I remember, I'm sure there are people in the room that kind of remember more than that we started with BBS systems, and then the web pages became popular. And then we made the web social in 2004, 2005 with Web 2.0. And then we started to encapsulate everything into these things called apps. So still the way we are interacting with data is very much similar to about 10 or 15 years ago. So I think the next step is exactly the need for what I told you. Self-adaptive services, contextual services, that while it's protecting your privacy, it can give you information that is most relevant to you. If you think about a user and how we interact with spaces, we download hundreds or thousands of apps, and we go through manual processes to figure out what is the relationship between us through a digital gateway to the rest of the world. And I think there is still a big gap between our surroundings and also the digital world. When we did our studies through different focus groups, we figured out that everybody is talking about contextual experiences. Everybody is talking about, oh, I would love to have an alarm clock that wakes me up at the right time based on how well I slept and when my meeting is in the morning. Or I would like to get a notification if my bus is running late. Or if I would love to have a coffee machine that changes the intensity of my espresso based on my stress level. Now, these are all experiences that we are hearing about, but what's happening in the industry is that I think, oh, I have to go build an app. These monolithic structures that cannot scale. So we believe that there is room for a new type of a data structure that becomes available, that allows us to interact with our surroundings in a more effective way. So if you think about how we started, first we introduced digits by calling. Then we introduced URLs and web services that a lot of us are using these days. And then we start to encapsulate them in hashtags and Twitter feed. But again, if you think about it, if you connect to the Bosch size Twitter feed now, all of us will see the same thing. But think about a new data structure that we call it a zone. If we connect to Bosch ConnectedWorld zone, all of us, we may be able to see different information based on our interest, based on our profile, based on our availability. And that's exactly what Flybits is working on, and it's part of our IP portfolio, and I'll show you some examples. So to tell you what a zone is, it's essentially one data structure that can connect people to data, to connected things in your proximity, and also to location. For those of you who have done programming, if you ask someone to create a contextual user experience for you, they have to go to different set of repositories. I need location from here. I need social from here. I need identity from somewhere else. In the case of Flybits, you just need one zone. Everything is encapsulated in that for you. So it's much scalable to be able to grow your offering. So a zone, essentially, it's a context repository that can include things such as device context, what is my battery level, what is my bandwidth. It can have sensory data, it can have location data, and it can have profile data. So it's beyond location, because the paradigm in the market now is that, oh, I want to build a geofence around this building and push coupons to people, right? Context is beyond location. So the way we designed Flybits is that you can essentially use our context plugins and identify what sort of an experience you want to create for people. Now, we have a platform called the FlyBit Curator. You can basically select any geography in the world or upload the GIS files of all your affiliated geography, associate that geography or that object with a number of bits, those are the apps that I showed you, and kind of fly these bits into those zones and target it to a group of people. Now, these bits can range from a workforce management app, it could be a web page, it could be a video, it could be an OpenGL game, doesn't matter. You have access to an application repository that you can associate an experience around the building. So our vision is that there will be a day that all the buildings, all the geographical spaces in the world will be associated with a zone rather than a Twitter hashtag. The way our system works is that, of course, we provide a mobile middleware in form of a software as a service. We open a number of APIs, and then we have vertical specific plugins that, let's say, you can apply to transportation, you can apply to utility, you can apply to stadiums, and I'll show you some examples on that. And in terms of the clients that you use, it can range from iPhone and Android, it can be on a Google Glass, it could be on a stationary machine. Those really doesn't matter. And that's what we mean by self-adaptive services. So let me show you some tangible examples. This is one of the solutions. Our company is funded by, we recently secured an investment through Robert Bosch Ventures and Vodafone Ventures. So those are the two investors we have in the company. And through Vodafone, we are launching a contextual service for cities. So you can basically look at a city through other people's lenses. So if I come to Berlin, I will get recommendations that I would like to see Berlin through your point of view. Or if you come to Toronto, don't come now because you're not going to like it, it's too cold. But if you come to Toronto, you will be able to see Toronto from my point of view. So it's more like a curation platform. Now I'm going to share a few examples with you on how other industries are using it. This is a deployment we have in Toronto with the largest transit operator in Canada. They have an app. You can use this app anywhere in the world, and you see generic services. But there are 1,500 zones in the Greater Toronto area that if you bring this app to that particular station, you will see these contextual widgets showing up on your handset and give you information that is all about you, your platform, the delay on your bus, things that you want to do. We have about 500,000 users on top of this platform, and now that the city has attracted that user base, they are thinking about opportunities that they call it non-fare revenue. How do I go and partner with retailers at a train station to be able to use this app to bring revenue to the company? We have used it in stadiums. So this is a use case with a number of football clubs in Europe that you can bring your app to the stadium, and immediately you will see services to be able to interact with the game, to vote, to connect to IP cameras. And if you leave the stadium, again, you still have access to a generic application. So we have given access to our platform, to the football club, that they can manage this experience for their audience. There's no coding involved. IT is only involved until they kind of integrate the system. And after that, we always say, if you can use Facebook, you can use the Flybits platform and start generating these experiences. We are working with banks. This is one of the largest banks in Canada and also in North America. And their challenge to us was that 90% of transactions are online, but we want to keep our branches. But the purpose of this branch is going to be a community enabler. And we are going to use our branches to provide community information to people in that neighborhood. So you can go to a bank, you can receive a relevant mortgage offer, you can book an appointment with a branch manager, and if you bring your mobile app to an airport, they may be able to upgrade your ticket to business class because you have purchased your ticket through their Visa card. Now, why do they do this? Because they want you to use their app beyond the geographical footprint of a branch, because they capture data, and then they will be able to go and partner with downstream merchants. So this is an example that how a bank is actually offering a smart city solution and growing from bottom up rather than following a top-down approach. City of Ottawa is another example of one of our customers that they started with traffic management and congestion management by connecting to IP cameras and providing traffic data. And now that they have a large user base, they are partnering with retailers, with museums, to be able to drive traffic to those parts of the city. About a month ago, we launched a solution for Bosch at the CES in Vegas. And this was a case that each product was a zone. So you could approach a product, and the relevant information about that product would show up on your handset. This was purely an iBeacon-based service. So you could basically bring the granularity down of the location to about 1 meter. So you can connect to a zone using GPS, GSM, beacon, NFC, QR code, really doesn't matter. We did London Fashion Week through Vodafone about a year ago. So you could discover zones in London, and if you could take your phone to a catwalk show, you could actually see what the model is wearing. After the show was over, we could navigate you to the booth or the designer booth that you wanted to purchase that item from. We are working with shopping malls, services that people can find their parking spot or be able to find the relevant store. We are connecting our solution to health metrics. So let's say if I go to a shopping center or to a grocery store, if I'm allergic to nuts, I will get reminders that the cereal box that I'm taking is not suitable for me, and I will get an alternative recommendation. All of these are curated using the Flybits platform. So we give this platform to our customers, and they come up with these use cases. Airports are using it, and this is an interesting example because although it's using our context engine, it is using augmented reality, not using icon-based services. So this was an airport that came to us and said, we want to be a North American hub for Asian flights coming to America. But they had to put 6 different languages on their signage system. Now, passengers can look at an augmented reality code, select the point of interest that they are looking, and then it will show up as an overlay. So if all of us go to that airport and look at the augmented reality marker, we will see different services showing up on our device. Museums are using it to curate very customized experiences for visitors. This is the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada. Campuses are using it. This is Ryerson University in Toronto that has mapped all their buildings. So if an engineering students come to an engineering building, he or she will see classroom information. But if I'm in charge of campus planning, I will see what type of an elevator should be serviced. But we are using one app. Vodafone is planning to use this for their corporate campuses. So let's say if I walk there as a guest, I will get my free Wi-Fi and I will get my free coffee. But if I'm a staff member, I'll be able to book a meeting room. Similar with another operator in Canada. We have also used it in security. So this is a deployment we did with Motorola about 1.5 years ago. that you could basically use Flybits on head-mounted gears, that you enter a building, and then you will be able to discover camera feeds. You can actually have accelerometers and head trackers, so you could move your head to get a better view of the building. And you could connect to all the sensors to figure out what's happening in terms of heat, temperature, humidity, and everything was shown on a Google Glass. The last few things, this is part of our R&D. They are not commercialized. We ran Flybits on a robot, so you could bring this robot to a space. If it identified the context and if it knew the people in the proximity, it would start to dance. But if you take it to another location that the context was not right, it would sit down and it will pretend to cry. Now, no commercial aspect yet, but it showed that devices can start to behave differently based on the context. This was another example that Prince Charles came to Canada to our office, and we trained the robot to recognize him, go, bow, and welcome him to Canada. Again, it was the same set of logics that we used in the previous example. The last example that I showed you, so of course we are thinking about IoT. Most of our deployments are on display-driven devices, but this is one of our prototypes in the office that we run Flybits on an Arduino board. So as soon as people walk to the office, we detect their stress level through their wearable, how well you slept. Through your calendar, we know how busy you are, and the coffee machine starts to change the intensity, makes the coffee, and send you a text message. Now, again, no commercial aspect yet, but what you can think about is that with Flybits, we are trying to kind of create these immersive environments around you, that devices, phones, objects can start to adapt based on the experience that you curate. So the vision we have is that we are going after the hubs in the cities. We are kind of creating zones, we are creating experience around them, and what we are forming is essentially a social network of spaces. So you can have one app, you can move from one location to another, and based on the ontologies, based on the semantics that you're using, you will start to see services that are very relevant to you. And the reason that we call this the spectrum of relevance is that as people and enterprises are building these zones, a crowdsourced spectrum will be created that its purpose is to give you the most relevant and contextual data possible. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Hossein.
Yeah, thank you.
Very impressive.
Yeah, thanks.
Stay here
Yeah,
just for
sure.
Q&A. Very impressive presentation, especially the live examples you already have realized there. I was really impressed, and I saw smiles on many faces, so thanks a lot. So a few questions we can allow. Yeah, you're first. Could we have a microphone here, fourth row?
Yeah, Strugala again from Bosch. One question with regard to your technology. I assume that you are not providing all the content in the zones. You are not defining the zones content. You are providing the technology that others can do so. What kind of assistance or what kind of development assistance you provide to these people which are probably no software guys, which are coming from the communities, coming from the shop floors, and how easy is it to update this stuff? Because all these zones will have a very vivid life. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. So as part of the platform, we have something which is very similar to a CMS or a content management system, and you have these templates that you can use to offer different services. So you can drag and drop a video and say, here's the video I want to provision to people. In a lot of enterprise deployments that we have done, we integrate it with the existing CMS platform that the company has. So automatically, they fully integrate it, and it's just a matter of finding someone like in marketing who can go and curate the experiences with. The reason we did that is that we want IT to be involved until the integration is done, and the rest of it will be very easy, a drag and drop interface that you can use. Some of the content can be curated automatically, so you can actually have scripts to say, go and fetch these data for me and kind of populate it in an automatic way. And at the same time, you have access to a manual management console that you can basically use it like any other visual CMS.
Thanks. Any more questions? Here in the back.
Yeah, Christian Renz from Bosch Software Innovations. I'd be interested to know if my own preferences become part of the context, such as the languages I speak, the budget I have available for lunch, the cuisine I like to eat, or what football club I'm rooting for. Do you have a formal ontology for this data that is shared across the whole of the Flybits architecture? That means I can move from one Flybits project to another one and immediately be recognized? Or is that something that is done individually for each project?
Very good point. We have a general ontology repository. So we have different types of zones. So you can have an airport zone, you can have an office zone, you can have a shopping center zone, and those ontologies are created, which are generic ontologies that you can use to kind of customize it for your organization. The way the system works is that you have access to all of our context plugins, you will activate them, and then let's say you connect it to your identity management system. You can connect it to Facebook, you can connect it to LinkedIn. So some of those ontologies, about 20 of them are available as part of the system. And if you have a very specific semantic in mind, we can actually build it for you through our ontology group. Yeah.
So one last question. Any more? If there's no more questions, then thanks a lot, Hossein.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.